Welcome to another calm episode of Boring History to Sleep, the place where history is told slowly and gently. Here the past becomes a soft lullaby, and each word is meant to guide you into rest. Tonight, we drift across the seas of imagination, following the faint echoes of a lost world, the world of Atlantis. Some say Atlantis was real, while others believe it was only a story, but tonight, reality does not matter. What matters is calmness. What matters is the steady rhythm of words, flowing like waves rolling on a shore, inviting you to breathe slowly. Close your eyes and drift into sleep. The story of Atlantis begins in ancient Greece. In the city of Athens lived a man named Plato, a thinker, a teacher, and a storyteller. Plato was not only a philosopher who explored truth and justice, he was also a writer who used stories to explain great ideas. Among his many works were two dialogues called the Timaeus and the Critias. These were written around 360 years before the Common Era. In them, Plato included a story that has captured imaginations for more than 2,000 years, the tale of Atlantis. According to Plato, the story came from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. It was said that 9,000 years before Plato's time, a powerful island empire had existed. This empire lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, the narrow passage between the Mediterranean Sea and the wide Atlantic Ocean. Beyond that strait, across the waters, was Atlantis. Plato described it as larger than Libya and Asia combined. It was not a small island, but a vast and rich land. Atlantis was powerful, with a navy that stretched across the seas and armies that conquered lands. For a time, it was glorious, but in the end, its greatness became its downfall. Atlantis grew proud, its rulers became greedy, and its people turned away from virtue. The gods looked upon Atlantis with anger. According to Plato, they punished the island with earthquakes and floods. In a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis sank beneath the sea. Its ships vanished, its temples crumbled, and the once mighty empire was lost forever. Plato did not present the story as fantasy. He told it as if it had been passed down truthfully from wise men of the past. Yet the tale also served as a warning, a lesson about the dangers of pride, the corruption of wealth, and the fall of nations that forget justice. For centuries, readers have debated Plato's account. Some accepted the story as fact, others doubted it, but everyone was fascinated. Atlantis was more than a place. It was a mystery, a riddle wrapped in waves, a dream that lingered through time. Imagine for a moment the setting in which this legend was first told. Ancient Athens, with its marble temples, its bustling markets, and its philosophers speaking in shaded courtyards. Into that world came the story of a distant land across the sea, with shining temples, strong walls, and harbors filled with ships. It was both strange and familiar, far away yet close to the imagination. Plato's dialogues were copied and studied. They spread through generations. Even though no other ancient writer described Atlantis in detail, the few words Plato left were enough to spark endless wonder. The story painted vivid images. It gave birth to questions, and it inspired seekers of hidden lands for millennia. Did Atlantis truly exist? Was it a memory of some forgotten place? Or was it only a tale used to illustrate a point? We may never know. But the story has remained, passed from reader to reader and century to century, like a candle flame kept alive in the dark. And now, as you hear this quiet retelling, you too carry the flame. You too drift with the story of Atlantis, not in search of truth, but in search of calm, in search of sleep. So breathe slowly, settle into your pillow, and let the story carry you forward. The journey has only just begun. According to Plato, Atlantis was not only powerful, it was also beautiful. He described the city in vivid detail, painting an image of a place unlike any other. The island was shaped with concentric rings of land and water, like circles spreading outward from a center. At the very heart of the island stood a grand palace, the home of the rulers. Surrounding it were canals, harbors, and rings of water connected by bridges, each one carefully designed. Ships filled the waterways, while roads led out to the countryside. It was both a fortress and a jewel of design. The walls of Atlantis were decorated with shining metals. Some were covered in bronze, others in tin, and some, according to Plato, in a mysterious substance called orichalcum, a metal that glowed with the color of fire. This strange and precious metal gave the city a brilliance that would have been visible from afar. It added to the aura of wealth and wonder that surrounded Atlantis. The rulers of the island claimed descent from Poseidon, the god of the sea. According to the story, Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman named Plato. To protect her, he built a home on a hill surrounded by rings of land and water. There she gave birth to 10 sons who became the first kings of Atlantis. Each ruled a part of the island, but together they were bound by a single law, united under the legacy of their divine father. The kings met in the great temple of Poseidon, an enormous building that was said to be surrounded by silver walls, golden pinnacles, and a roof of ivory. Inside, at the center of the temple, stood a giant statue of Poseidon. The god of the sea was depicted riding 6 winged horses, towering in size and majesty. Around him, the people offered sacrifices. Bulls were led into the temple, rituals were performed, and the kings swore their oaths of loyalty. It was a place of splendor, a center of faith, and the heart of the Atlantean Empire. Beyond the city, the land of Atlantis was fertile and rich. It produced grains, fruits, and vegetables in abundance. The soil was said to be black and deep, yielding harvests year after year. The forests were filled with timber, the fields with cattle, and the mountains with metals. Atlantis had elephants roaming its plains, horses for war and travel, and an endless variety of animals that thrived in its climate. Nature had blessed the land, and the people used its gifts to grow their wealth. The Atlanteans also excelled at building. They constructed docks and shipyards. They built palaces and fortresses. Their harbors were vast, filled with merchant ships and war vessels. From their capital, their influence spread across the seas. The Atlanteans were not only rulers of their island, but also masters of distant lands. Yet, despite all their wealth and power, Atlantis was described as a place of order and law. The kings were bound by traditions, they judged fairly, they kept balance among themselves. For a time, they lived in harmony. It was this harmony, Plato suggested, that made Atlantis great. The island prospered because its rulers remembered justice, and its people respected the laws of the gods. Imagine for a moment what it might have felt like to walk in the city of Atlantis. The shining walls of bronze and orichalcum catching the sunlight, the canals alive with ships carrying goods and people, the marketplace full of voices, the temple towering above with its golden decorations glimmering in the distance. It must have been a sight of beauty, power, and majesty, unlike anything else in the known world. But even in this glory, the seeds of change were already there. The wealth of Atlantis was vast. Its people enjoyed abundance. Its kings sat in luxury. And when abundance is endless, it can be easy to forget humility. In the quiet details of Plato's description, there is a shadow, a warning that wealth without virtue can lead to decline. The greatness of Atlantis was matched only by the dangers that came with it. And so the legend of Atlantis was not only about its temples and canals, its metals and animals, but also about the fragile balance between power and morality. A balance that would not last forever. As time passed, the harmony of Atlantis began to fade. For generations, the kings had ruled with justice, guided by the laws of Poseidon. They remembered balance, they honored their oaths. But as their power grew, so did their pride. Slowly, virtue gave way to greed. The kings and their people began to value wealth over wisdom, conquest over fairness, and luxury over humility. Plato wrote that the Atlanteans no longer cared for what was just. They became hungry for power, extending their reach across the seas. Their armies marched to distant lands, seeking dominion. Their fleets filled with warships, spreading their influence over many peoples. Once they had ruled with fairness, but now they sought control. Their empire became less a kingdom of justice and more a machine of conquest. The gods looked upon Atlantis. They saw a people who had forgotten virtue. They saw corruption in the hearts of the kings. They saw greed in the streets of the city. The gods, who had once blessed the land, now turned away. They decided to punish Atlantis for its pride. The punishment, Plato wrote, came swiftly. In a single day and a single night of misfortune, Atlantis was destroyed. The earth trembled. The seas rose. The skies shook with storms. Earthquakes tore through the land, breaking the walls and shattering the temples. The harbors filled with waves that surged higher and higher. Ships were smashed against each other. Canals overflowed. The shining temples crumbled into dust. The people of Atlantis could do nothing. Their armies were powerless against the sea. Their ships could not escape the storm. Their wealth, their temples, their harvests, and their homes all were swallowed by the waves. The island that had once stood proud above the ocean sank beneath it. The waters closed over the land, and Atlantis vanished. According to Plato, the sea where the island had once stood became filled with mud and shoals, making it impassable for ships. Where once there had been a mighty empire, there was now only silence. Imagine the scene slowly. The trembling of the earth beneath your feet, the roar of waves growing louder, the sudden collapse of walls that had stood for centuries, the glittering temple of Poseidon falling into the sea, the shouts of people mixed with the sound of thunder and rain, and then the silence of the ocean covering it all. The world above continued, but Atlantis was gone. In Plato's telling, the destruction of Atlantis was not only a story of disaster, but also a lesson. It was a warning that even the greatest civilizations can fall if they lose sight of virtue. No matter how strong the walls, how great the temples, or how vast the armies, none of it can protect a people who have lost balance with the gods and with themselves. For those who listened in ancient times, the story of Atlantis was both tragic and instructive. It reminded them that no empire lasts forever, that pride comes before the fall, and that what is lost to the sea can never be reclaimed. And so, in a single day and night, the mighty Atlantis passed from reality into legend, from a living place into a story told across generations, a story that continues even now as you listen and let the quiet rhythm carry you deeper into calm. After Plato's time, the story of Atlantis did not vanish. Instead, it traveled across centuries, whispered in scrolls, retold by philosophers, poets, and dreamers. Each generation wondered if the tale was only an allegory, or if somewhere in the wide ocean, the ruins of Atlantis still slept beneath the waves. Some of Plato's followers believed Atlantis was never meant to be taken literally. To them, it was a parable, a symbolic tale about power, pride, and downfall. Just as a poet might use a myth to reveal a truth, they believed Plato invented Atlantis to warn Athens and all future nations about corruption. To these thinkers, the story was a mirror for society rather than a record of history. Yet not everyone agreed. Others insisted that Plato's detail was too precise to be only invention. The names, the laws, the geography of the island, the story of its fall, it seemed too vivid to be entirely fiction. Surely, they thought, Plato must have drawn it from some older source. Some pointed to the priests of Egypt. Plato himself claimed the story came from them, passed down through Solon, an Athenian statesman. If the Egyptians remembered Atlantis, perhaps it was real. During the Middle Ages, the story of Atlantis lingered quietly. waiting for a time when exploration and curiosity would bring it to life again. That time came in the age of discovery, when sailors crossed oceans and found new lands. Suddenly, the idea of lost continents and hidden islands seemed less like fantasy and more like possibility. If unknown lands like the Americas could exist, why not Atlantis? Writers and explorers began to wonder if the New World itself was Atlantis. Some argued that the great civilizations of the Maya or the Aztecs might have descended from the Atlanteans. The pyramids of the Americas seemed to echo the temples Plato described. Others thought Atlantis lay in the Caribbean, beneath the turquoise waters where coral reefs stretched like drowned cities. In the 19th century, interest in Atlantis rose once more. A writer named Ignatius Donnelly published a famous book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. Donnelly believed Atlantis was a real continent that once connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas. He claimed it was the cradle of all human civilization, the place where agriculture, writing, and architecture began before spreading to the rest of the world. His ideas captured imaginations, and many people came to believe Atlantis was not only real, but central to human history. Scientists, however, often disagreed. Geologists pointed out that no evidence existed of a sunken continent in the Atlantic Ocean. The Earth's crust, they explained, could not hide such a landmass. Still, the mystery remained, and believers continued to search. In modern times, theories of Atlantis have spread even further. Some suggest it lies under the Mediterranean Sea, near islands like Santorini or Crete, where the eruption of a volcano destroyed the Minoan civilization. The disaster there mirrored Plato's description, sudden, violent, and consuming. Others believe Atlantis lies beneath Antarctica, hidden under the ice. And still others imagine it far across the ocean, near the Azores or beyond. Beyond geography, Atlantis has also entered the world of legend and imagination. It has appeared in novels, in art, in music, and in film. Sometimes it is shown as a utopia, a shining city of wisdom. Other times as a place of arrogance and destruction. In every version, Atlantis continues to spark curiosity. The story survives because it holds both mystery and meaning. It may be a warning about pride. It may be a memory of a real disaster. It may be a dream of a golden age lost. But whatever it is, Atlantis continues to live in the human mind, half real and half myth, always just beyond reach. As you hear these theories, you may feel the slow rhythm of history weaving into legend. Questions without answers, stories without endings. The quiet mystery allows the mind to wander, and in that wandering, calm begins to settle in. Though Atlantis may have vanished into the sea thousands of years ago, or into the imagination of Plato, it has never vanished from human thought. In fact, it has become one of the most enduring legends of all time. In the modern age, the story of Atlantis has appeared almost everywhere. Writers have filled books with speculation. Poets have described its beauty. Artists have painted glowing visions of temples, palaces, and shining towers beneath the waves. The image of Atlantis has become a symbol of mystery, a city forever out of reach. In movies and television, Atlantis often reappears as a place of wonder. Sometimes it is shown as a lost civilization hidden deep beneath the sea. Other times, it is a futuristic society advanced beyond our own. From science fiction films to animated adventures, Atlantis has become a canvas on which creators paint their dreams. Each version reflects our hopes and our fears, a perfect world we long for, or a warning of what pride can destroy. Music, too, has carried the name of Atlantis. Composers have written pieces inspired by the legend. Singers have used it as a metaphor for love, for loss, for mystery. In every art, Atlantis finds a place, because it is not just a story of the past, it is also a reflection of the human spirit, always searching for what is hidden. Even in science, the idea of Atlantis lingers. Some researchers have suggested connections between the legend and real events, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, or floods that destroyed ancient peoples. Others believe the tale may hold fragments of memory carried through time and reshaped into myth. While mainstream science does not recognize Atlantis as a real continent, the search continues. Every few years, headlines appear claiming new discoveries, ruins under the sea, maps showing lost lands, or structures thought to be Atlantean. Each time, the mystery stirs again. What is it about Atlantis that captures us so deeply? Perhaps it is the balance of hope and tragedy, the dream of a golden city, wise and prosperous, the warning of its fall, sudden and complete. We see in it both the best of humanity and the dangers of forgetting humility. For some, Atlantis is a symbol of perfection, a paradise lost to time. For others, it is a reminder of pride's cost, a cautionary tale that no empire is safe from collapse. And for many, it is simply a beautiful mystery, an unanswered question that lets the imagination drift. As you reflect on this story, imagine the city once more, the wide harbors filled with ships, the canals glowing under the sun, the temple of Poseidon shining with silver and gold. Then imagine the silence as the sea covers it, leaving only memory, a city of dreams, now resting in legend. And so the tale of Atlantis ends where it began, with Plato, and with a question: was it real, or was it a story? We may never know, but perhaps that is why it endures. Because in the space between truth and myth, the mind can rest, wander, and dream. As you settle into the quiet, let the waves of the story fade gently. Let the mystery of Atlantis drift like a ship into the horizon. The tale has been told, and the rest is silence.